Hey guys, welcome back to ScripSips. On today's episode, we're looking at Philippians chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. So go ahead and get your Bible to that page. As usual, let me give you a little bit of background information. Today, I'm not telling you that Paul is still in prison. I'm just going to remind you of the meta structure that we talked about yesterday. So the meta structure is chapter 1 verse 27 all the way until chapter 2 verse 18. Paul is just talking about what it means to live a life that's worthy of the gospel. And in today's section, Paul is going to zoom in on humbly loving others, just like Jesus humbly loved us. In today's passage, there is a little bit of structure that I want to tell you about as well, okay? Just to give you some idea of how to break up the passage while you're reading it, since today's passage is a little longer than usual. So verses 1 through 2, Paul is still talking about unity. Verses 3 through 4, Paul is talking about how we as the Christian community should love one another humbly. And then verses 5 through 11, he's pointing us to Jesus' example of how he loved us humbly. Okay, and Paul wants us to ground our idea of what it is to love humbly in Jesus' example. Because Paul doesn't want us to just have our own random ideas of what it is to love each other. He has a very specific idea of what it's supposed to mean for Christians to love one another humbly. So as you read this passage, focus on the question of what does it mean to love other people humbly? What is Jesus' example really? So go ahead and pause the video, and then after you're done with that, come back and I'll give you a takeaway or two. Welcome back. So the first takeaway I want to give you is, this is a good time to reflect on what it means for Jesus to love us. I think it's one of those things that we take for granted, and a lot of times we don't really think about it deeply. And in this passage, Paul gives us a really clear picture in verses 5 through 11 about what it really means that the Son of God loved us. Like, you think about the sacrifice that it was for him to be fully God and to choose to condescend, to be born as a human. And then not just that, but also to humble himself to the point of death on a cross. That's real humble love. That's the golden standard. The way that Jesus loved us shows us exactly what Paul means in verses 3 through 4. When Jesus didn't just look out for his own interests, but he looked out for our interests as well, right? That's verse 4. When Jesus didn't consider his own life too valuable that he wouldn't be willing to lay it down for us, that's verse 3, right? He's considering our interests even above his own life. So this is just one of those really good passages where we can stop and think about what it means that Jesus loved us and gave himself for us. And as a second takeaway, this is a really good time for us to think about how we can grow in our love for other people, right? Like, a lot of times we're only willing to love people when it's convenient for us, or we'll go out of our way for someone if it's not too hard or doesn't cost us anything. If anything, this passage teaches us that we have to be willing to love other people at our own expense, right? We have to serve them at our own expense. And again, this is one of those points when I'm just giving you a principle, and it's up to you to think about how you can apply it practically in your own life. Maybe this means that this is going to have to change the way that you live with your siblings, or maybe this is going to change the way you live with your parents. Or maybe going out of your way to love someone is texting them and asking them how they're doing. It's initiating with them instead of just being like, oh, do you want to play Minecraft today? So with all that said, I hope this study was helpful for you. I'll see you tomorrow.